How do you catch a war elephant? With a giant mousetrap. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. Catching these mighty animals requires a healthy dose of ingenuity. From the ancient Greeks and Romans to the medieval rulers of East Asia and the British in the 20th century, many armies throughout history have relied on war elephants. This video explores how they were traditionally hunted in India, particularly in the Mughal Empire, and how a mousetrap fits in. Elephants have played an important role in India since ancient times. They were hunted, used as riding and pack animals, and, at least since the Vedic period, used in warfare. In India's first well-documented army, the so-called Fourfold Army, elephant units were firmly established alongside infantry, cavalry, and chariots. They served as pack animals, or ultra-heavy cavalry, and were usually at the center of the formation in battle. There, the huge animals blocked attacks or charged the enemies themselves. Their effectiveness was demonstrated, for example, when the great Mongol conqueror Timur attacked the Delhi Sultanate in 1398. Near the capital, the Sultan's troop confronted him with their war elephants, and came within a whisker of ending Timur's triumphal march of conquest. It was only when he resorted to a trick, chasing camels with burning straw on their back toward the elephants, that he managed to turn the tide. The fire scared the elephants so much that they bolted through their own ranks. Timur was so impressed by the animals that he integrated them into his own army and later used them against the Ottoman Empire. Elephants weren't just war machines. They were an essential part of Indian culture. They were worshipped in the form of Ganesha, the god of obstacles, who has a human body and an elephant's head, and played an important role at court. According to the Orientalist Simon Digby, the Sultans of Delhi owned between 750 and 1,000 war elephants at the beginning of the 14th century. Maintaining such a large population was difficult because elephant reproduction in captivity is severely restricted, making breeding very difficult. In addition, only experienced animals could be used as war elephants. According to the historian Sarva Daman Singh, the grey giants were not used for military purposes until they were 25. While the ideal age to deploy them in battle was around 60. Males were preferred for fighting because they were larger and more aggressive. As breeding was complicated, hunting was the most important source of new elephants. The Indian historian Zia-ud-Din Barani gives an example of how such a hunt took place in the 14th century. He describes how Sultan Firuz Shah Tughlaq had a wooded area with a herd of elephants surrounded by a wooden wall, a kind of solid fence. He sent drummers and elephant riders into this enclosure, which only had 2 openings, to scare the herd and drive them back and forth until they were exhausted. After several days, the elephants were easily captured and tamed. Over the next few centuries, Indian rulers continued to expand their herds and refine their hunting methods. Wondering about the mousetrap? We're getting closer. War elephants were a mainstay of Indian armies and remained so even when black powder weapons were introduced. In fact, it was only then that the number of elephants the Indian rulers owned reached its peak. However, in the First Battle of Panipat, often considered the first land battle in India won with black powder, elephants had difficulties coping with the new weapons. In 1525, the Timurid Babur invaded the Sultanate of Delhi. Sultan Ibrahim Lodi assembled a massive army, reportedly consisting of 100,000 men and 1,000 war elephants, to confront the invader. Babur entrenched himself in a strong position near the city of Panipat, with just about 12,000 to 15,000 men, some of whom were equipped with modern matchlock muskets. On the morning of the 20th of April, 1526, Ibrahim advanced against this position with his troops, but the front was too narrow for the Sultan to make full use of his large army. Soon, the muskets and cannons in Babur's center tore large gaps into the densely packed mass of attackers. Ibrahim's elephants had never experienced black powder weapons before and galloped away in panic, trampling wide swaths through their own ranks. When Babur's mounted archers appeared at Ibrahim's rear, the battle was decided. With the victory at Panipat, Babur laid the foundation of the Mughal Empire. The Mughals continued the tradition of relying on elephants for warfare, although some claim that the rise of black powder weapons reduced the effectiveness of war elephants. The animals remained important for warfare. After the experience during the Battle of Panipat, the animals were trained to tolerate the sound of gunfire, and soon deployed alongside small arms and artillery. According to the Venetian adventurer Niccolo Manucci, quote, "All the elephants he rides are trained to stand fire of both artillery and musketry, of rockets and other fireworks." Later in history, war elephants even had small cannons on their back, so-called swivel guns, which supposedly outranged muskets, making the elephants a sort of mobile artillery. The Mughal rulers devoted much time to the protection and care of their elephants in the empire, and continually increased the size of the royal herd. The number of animals they kept probably peaked in the 17th century. Historian Shireen Mosvi estimates that there were around 40,000 elephants in their stables, significantly more than the estimated 25,000 animals living in the wild in India today. To maintain a herd of this size, the Grand Mughal needed to continuously catch new animals. The most important hunting grounds were in northern India, especially in Bengal, Assam and Malwa. The Indians showed great creativity in hunting. Grand Mughal Akbar is said to have developed a new, remarkably efficient method of catching animals. He had a herd of elephants surrounded on 3 sides by beaters, and placed tame elephant cows on the 3rd, open side. As soon as the bulls in the herd saw these cows, they wanted to protect them and followed them without realizing they were being lured in an enclosure. In addition to these new approaches, according to Akbar's court historian Abul Fazl, there were 4 traditional hunting methods: Keda, Korkeda, Gad, and Bar. Interestingly, some of these methods are still used in India today to maintain the population of around 15,000 domesticated elephants, although elephant hunting has long been banned. Keda was an ancient method of trapping elephants. According to Abul Fazl, it was a kind of chase. A group of drummers went into the jungle and startled the elephants by playing a wild rhythm. These beaters would then chase the animals until they were tired and eventually sought shelter under a tree or in a thicket. Then the most skillful hunters would sneak up, entangle them in a rope, and tie them to a tree. This task was so risky that the men who undertook it were richly rewarded. They received a quarter of the value of the captured elephant as payment. The second method, Korkeda, was even more dangerous. Here, a hunter mounted a tamed elephant cow, approached a wild elephant and tried to reach it from the cow's back. When the 2 animals began to fight, the hunter would throw a rope around one of the elephant's feet or neck and restrain it. It often took several elephant teams to bring the wild animal under control. The third method, Gad, was the most common, according to the historian Dr. Debraj Chakraborty. In this method, the hunters dug a pit and covered it with branches and grass. When the elephant came near the trap, they used noise and fire to drive it closer and closer until it finally fell in. As it tried to free itself, the animal gradually tired, allowing the hunters to tame it safely. It is the fourth and last traditional method, Bar, that the mousetrap comes into play. The hunters dug a deep trench around the resting place of a herd of elephants, leaving only a single narrow passage. On the outside of this passage, they built a giant cage with a kind of portcullis, in which they placed a lure. As soon as an elephant entered the cage for food, the hunters lowered the gate and the trap snapped shut, like a giant live mousetrap. The captured elephants were trained in a lengthy process until they were finally, after years or even decades, ready to go into battle. Since very few of you depend on a war elephant, we ask you not to put the information in this video into practice. Asian elephants are an endangered species, and habitat destruction, hunting and poaching are already costing more than enough of these impressive animals their lives. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to support our work, check out our Patreon. Even just a few dollars a month help us improve and keep making these videos. And lastly, if you're into military fiction, sci-fi, or want to see which history books we recommend, take a look at our Amazon storefront.